This
Wow.
right
Wow.
here. That's what I come to it for. That's what I'm around here for. We finished at long last. Sangatsu no Lion.
The Beast. We've been
Both
avoiding the
seasons.
show like a lion.
We have, and there's a number of reasons for that. One, it's long as fuck. It was 44 episodes. Two, because it's a lot to watch. Like,
I'm not gonna say it's emotionally draining because that's not
draining.
how it is. It's just like it is
intense is the word I would
It is
use.
very intense, and like it starts off pretty slow.
I mean, when I watched the first 11 episodes way back for the 2016 Finish or Fail, I remember losing my shit. I remember crying. I remember being really emotional. And a big part of my fear was that I didn't want to have to go start from the beginning and rewatch the first 11 again. This is always a problem I run into if I don't finish an anime soon enough that, like, I don't remember enough of what's going on. I'm always afraid that I'm not going to like it as much the second time, or that, like, you know, that, I don't know. I'm just always terrified to, like, return to a show that I didn't finish that I loved, especially when, like, there's some people who are saying it gets even better, but some people are saying it gets worse. So it's like, oh, what if it turns out to not be good the rest of the way through? And that's always fucking scary. And, like, anytime there's shows that I know I'm going to like, I'm afraid to watch them because I want there to still be surprises out there. It's like, if I watch everything that I know is supposed to be good, then at some point I run out of new things to, you know, blow me away.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to just watch a bunch of bullshit that you know, can flippantly drop or skate through 12 episodes and be like, oh, alright, that was fun. But, like, we did it. And, you know, I might have to sleep on this statement for a couple of years before I'm confident, but, it might be my favorite anime of all time.
Damn.
It might just
That
be
is
my
a
favorite
high
anime.
mark.
10 out of 10. The first season, I was feeling like a 9.6. I was feeling like it reached some incredible highs, but I had remembered, this was another part of the reason that I was scared to continue it, is that, so, and just to clarify, you had not seen all 11 of those first 11 episodes, but you'd seen a few.
I've seen, I want to say, like, 6 or 7
and
episodes.
We got really lucky because after episode 11 there was a recap.
It's a recap episode, and it's great. It's a great recap episode.
Yeah, and it just so happens that the website we were watching this on,
it just included it in the episode.
Included it
count,
as
not
episode
separately,
12,
yeah.
so we didn't even know it was like a separate recap. We just watched episode 12 and we were like, oh, it's a recap episode. Oh, it's telling us literally everything. Great. And, like, of course, for me, it's sparking all my memories, so I can just explain to you more of the context
Yeah, and
behind.
it also, like, you know, sparked my memories, too, because
Yeah.
I didn't really miss out a whole lot. Like, I
Yeah.
think there was just, like, one match that was kind of a big deal that I missed.
Yeah, the main thing, because it
It's
reminded
easy to
me
show
of all the
footage,
emotional moments from early on, because it mostly highlights that stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
the scene where Nikaido is yelling at him through the TV about his shogi. That's one of my favorite scenes. The one, I think you did miss this scene where he first sits down with the guy who Hina's in love with, the baseball kid, and, like, because that scene is, like, Ray is going to meet him. I don't remember why they're meeting each other, but, like, he's really nervous, but, like, he says, the guy is, like, a huge fan of him, and he's, like, basically looking for advice on, like, whether or not he should, like, try to follow his dreams. And Ray, like, says something kind of vague and esoteric to him, but the guy gets it and responds in kind, and he's like, oh my god, I made a human connection, and I was like, ah, losing my shit. But, like, towards the midsection of the first season, there's a point where, so for anybody who doesn't know what the hell this show is, you should watch it. First of all, watch the show.
Yeah, don't be a little bitch. Don't be afraid of the lion. Don't be like, oh, it's sad, I won't like it, it's slow. You should definitely watch it.
It's really not sad. It has sad moments, but, like, the show is extremely uplifting, extremely heartwarming. It makes me feel amazing to be a person alive.
Yeah.
And you all know how I feel. Like, I just made that being a YouTuber is great video where I'm like,
it's a human core anime.
I don't like being on Earth. And now I'm like, humans. You know. But, like...
I didn't make me like humans more.
No, not at all.
It made me, you know, appreciate the experience of feeling emotions.
Yeah.
As an entity floating amongst the masses.
We're gonna fanboy about this show all day, by the way.
I mean, there's there's shitty people in the show.
Yeah, and it's great
let you forget that they exist.
And they're so well done.
Yeah.
Nobody is just a caricature. Nobody's just a piece of shit for no reason. They're all
even Ray's
well-rounded.
upbringing. Like, if you've ever everybody's seen Harry Potter, but it's just like this is the right way to do that dynamic.
Yeah. Whereas Harry Potter is like, look at this cartoonishly evil fat fuck family that you hate. But, like, in this, it's like...
It's like you could still hate them, but you know they're human at the end of the day, like...
And you relate, get why they're like this. It's like, oh, it's so unfortunate that it happened this way, but it happens... Ugh!
It's like, it's not really any one person's fault. It's like, the parents are shitty, but, like...
Yeah.
You know, the whole situation is shitty.
So we have to back up and explain what the show is about. The main character, Ray, is this sad boy who... His parents died when he was young. He was adopted by his dad's friend. And his dad was, like, into shogi. Shogi is Japanese chess. I don't know. I think it came after... I don't know if it's, like, based on chess or what. But, like, it's a very similar type of game where you've got a gridded board.
It's probably based off of chess, I think. Don't quote me on this. I think chess is, like, Arabic in origin.
Really?
I think.
I had no idea.
I'm not sure. I know that, like, during the Silk Roads era, that was, like, when it was...
Big.
Spread, I think.
I don't know anything about the history of chess or shogi, but, shogi is very... It's like chess, but it's very Japanese, and the show explains generally how the game works, but, I don't know fucking anything that was going on during shogi scenes. It doesn't matter. I'm giving the show a 10 out of 10, having no idea the first thing about shogi. So, if you are worried, because this is basically a shogi sports anime on some level, don't worry about it.
They tell you what you need to know. It's not so dissimilar from chess.
I mean, you know what's going on because
simple,
it's a
good idea. It's like, okay, you're trying to, like, take over the other guy's pieces. Like, you get it. It's two people who are thinking very hard.
Yeah.
And, like... You know, it's not so much about the strategy. Like, they talk about it, but, like, you can...
Well, you understand it because, like, any good sports anime will, like, they convey the emotions of the sport more... So you don't have to know what's going on to know what's going on. Yeah. It's like, they're going to do everything in their power to make you feel how you're supposed to feel about what's happening. Sure, you might see the piece drop and you don't really get why it's important, but when you see everyone's reactions to it, you understand, okay, he just made an incredible move, you know? And, like, when the characters describe how it makes them feel to have seen this move, then you understand exactly the tenor of the match, you know? And, like, I don't know, like, I am confident that this is realistic shogi because they are so, like, they don't hide anything. It's not like, they're not coy about what's happening. They show you the board constantly. You always know exactly what's happening. I don't know how much of it's based on, like, famous matches or just consulting shogi players or what, but, like, you know, you don't require any suspension of disbelief. And I can tell, regardless of not knowing the game, you can usually tell in a sports show if the game is being unrealistic. If you watch Kuroko's Basketball or, like, Saki for Mahjong, like, you know that you're watching unrealistic version of this thing. Sangatsu seems like it is true to the sport. I just don't know I always wonder with stuff like this, like, how does this manga author know how to create these incredible shogi scenarios other than, I guess, to, literally base it on real games that have happened, which, I mean, would make sense because it's a solved game. It's not like every possibility can be accounted for. I assume it's a solved game because there's a limited number of possibilities, even if it's an incredibly large one.
Only 81 spaces on the board and only so many pieces,
Like, chess is solved, but it's not about, it's about, like, there's so many possibilities that who the fuck has memorized them all, and can act on them on the fly.
And there's a big difference between, playing against a supercomputer and an actual, champion, because that person's going to have strategy, and then there's, reading minds and playing, mind games and stuff is a really big component of playing face-to-face with somebody else, and that's, really exciting to see, and the animation they do for it is fucking dope.
So, it's fucking
I love
lit.
how all of the characters, all of the opponents in the matches, kind of have their own, way that their moves are being represented.
Yeah.
The white-haired guy, it's like a snowstorm, and then the old guy, he's like the Human Torch.
Yeah, and they don't take it as far, because other sports anime get way cheesier about that than this one, where it's everybody describes the character that way. In this, it's not like that is the way the character is. It's just that's how the opponent feels during that match.
And it's very clear that the feelings are real too, because you can see how after the match is over, you can see how drained the players are and how much they had to put themselves through, how much mental strain it takes to play one of these games that often go on for 8 hours.
Yeah, they're incredibly long games. And fucking so the core narrative is that the main kid, his dad was kind of into shogi. His stepdad, well, not stepdad, but adoptive father, is a professional shogi player. And so because shogi's basically all he has, he just completely throws himself into it. Now his adoptive father also has 2 kids already who he was training to be shogi masters, but because Rei is so much better than them, it basically breaks their home. It fucking ruins everyone's life. And so, as soon as he reaches high school, he moves out on his own, because he's a professional shogi player, he's making a shitload of money, so he moves out and just lives an austere life of doing nothing but playing shogi. However, I don't remember exactly how he meets the 3 sisters, but he manages to befriend this trio of sisters who had also lost their parents, who lives with their granddad in his sweets shop, and they become his human connection that he has. And so the show is simultaneously a slice of life show about his everyday life and his interactions with these 3 girls, as well as his life in the shogi world, where it's more of a sports narrative. And the integration of all this stuff is so good. But, there's a point early into Season 1 where after we've got, a lot of emotional drama and stuff, introducing us to all the central characters and sort of getting the ball rolling, there's a period where it's kind of just he's having matches with sort of random people, and each episode is introducing us to that person, giving us some backstory, and then the match ends and there's a fallout from it, but it's almost episodic. Mm-hmm. And that was probably the weakest part of the show, even though it's still good.
Yeah, I'm really happy that in Season 2 they kind of step away from
I would even say the second half of Season 1. It really just lasts a couple episodes, and I was really worried that it was going to be more of that. But then the next match that would have been that way, instead the character who gets introduced becomes one of the main characters. And from that point forward, the show really rarely has matches like that, where there's a character who's not going to be around for the main, for the rest of the show. It's rarely that you have just some random one-off guy. And even when you do, they're really interesting, weird, eclectic really people.
Go in depth of why this person acts this way and their perspective versus the main characters, and Ray always learns something from every match that he has.
God, it's so fucking...
It's really great.
So bomb. So what I want to talk about, what word kept coming into my mind, especially during the second season, is shandification. And if you've never seen the Mr. B-Tongue video, The Shandification of Fallout, it's one of my favorite YouTube videos.
I've seen it at least twice.
Yeah. I've seen it probably 10 times.
I'd
but
believe that.
it's about... He talks about this book called Tristram Shandy that was from, I think the late 1800s. And how this book sort of meanders around through, the lives of all these different characters who are, who have interactions with each other in this place. And basically what he explains about the idea of shandification is that with a normal plot, you're usually trying to draw a through line between events that you consider to be your story. So, even though every character in the story obviously has to have a life outside of the story, you choose which elements to focus on, and most stories try to keep it as tight as possible. They try to just go through, whatever information is exactly necessary to convey a 3-act structured plot. But this story is extremely shandified, where what it chooses to focus on really just depends on where the author felt like going. And, you might have a character who seems like just sort of a minor background character for a while. It's somebody who has a distinctive personality, but they're just kind of around, and maybe you see them play a match here and there, or maybe they're just kind of, a support character. But then it might be that suddenly they get a whole episode focused on them, and you learn this character's whole backstory, and you learn, what they're going through at the moment or something. You learn some extra thing about them so that when they have this moment, it's like you have a smaller story contained within the big one, and it's constantly doing this. It's always shifting focus, always finding another character, another point of intrigue to approach, because the show isn't really about anything per se. It's about everything. It's about every single little element that can have an effect on the lives of the characters. And obviously you can't fill in every minute detail of everyone's life at all times, because that's an endless amount of information, any one story experienced in real time is a whole life. But because of the fact that it allows itself to explore and to not try to be tightly honed in, it manages to make everything feel so real and alive, and you care about almost every fucking character. And so when they interact, their interactions continue to get more meaningful, and you keep learning more, and then sometimes you learn a piece of information that recontextualizes everything you knew before, and you're like, holy fuck. I don't know if I want to get into spoilers yet, because I don't know if we've explained enough of what's good about the show, but there's one character who you find out has a certain disability that this character's been around for the whole show, and when you learn it, it immediately makes perfect sense, but you're like, oh fuck, that's what's been going on this whole time. Shit! And then you just want to rewatch the show and have it in mind and be like, oh my god.
Everything. It's
right.
You want to understand all of the scenes and why this character was behaving this way, and why he has this reputation and all this stuff.
So
that moment was fucking great.
That was one of the most mind-blowing twists.
That was one of the cutest episodes
I've seen. It
ever.
Was. We'll get into that again later. I still want to talk about the baseline of what's good. So the shandification, I'm a huge fan of well-shandified narratives, because I think it makes the world feel like it extends beyond the story. And I am somebody who's not that much of a story guy. I've become more of one over the years because I can appreciate a really unique or well-told story, but stories are mostly the same. They're mostly the same archetypes being used again and again, the same structures. I'm not that interested in 3-act tight storytelling. I'm more interested in getting engrossed in a world and meta. I tend to like shows for the way that they fall in with the meta of everything else, even more so than the shows themselves. So when a show has meta in itself, that's really exciting to me. And this show, like, it has meta. It has tons of extra information that, you know, you might at one point be like, I don't see how this is relevant, but then eventually it will, you know,
everything
not even
is relevant.
Right. Where do you draw the line between what is or isn't relevant to a story if it all adds something? That's what matters. It's that none of it is frivolous. None of it doesn't matter at all. And even sometimes when it's just a weird, goofy detail, it still gives you something. Like, oh my god, one of my favorite scenes, or like, I would even call it a mini arc happening, is about the posters. Because the Shogi Hall, Shogi is, you know, it's an old guy sport. Like, it's not super popular with young people. It's not like, it's televised and it's important, and like, you can get a level of fame within the shogi world and be a respected person who, you know, people know about. But like, not every shogi match or even every shogi championship is going to be the biggest deal, especially if players who aren't super popular are doing it. So there's one part where the main character is going to get to have an exhibition match with like the champion for reasons, and they make a poster for it that's like this utterly beautiful, like, movie poster for this event.
Yeah, it's like a giant poster with, like...
Even though it's just an exhibition match that, like, you know the main character's going to lose because he's, like, not even close to the same level as the champ. But, like, meanwhile, there's, like, this really, like, an actual title match that's going on, but it's between two old, like, sickly guys who are, like, you know, who nobody's gonna want to watch. So, like, they don't really spend that much on the poster, and it looks like shit. And there's this whole scene of just the two older guys, like, looking at the poster and just bitching about it. You know? And it's like, yeah, this enriches my understanding of the nature of shogi. Because, like, at this point in the story, like, we've been fixated on shogi the whole time, but, like, this puts it into context of the society around it, like, and what they have to do to market the game. And, like, that is a fascinating detail.
Yeah.
You know? And then there's parts with the three sisters where they'll go into, like, teaching you how to cook a dish. Like, there's literally parts where it'll become a cooking show. And, like, in those scenes, there's, like, not only do the dishes look great, and it makes you want to go make it yourself, but also it's a learning exercise in what you can do on a budget. Because the girls are basically poor. So, like, they'll find ways to make, like, really creative dishes with little money. And it just makes them that much more endearing. And it's, everything in it is so fucking good. Every scene is so good. But really, really, what makes it a 10 out of 10, because you know I don't give a shit about anything except for pretty colors, is that the visuals are incredible all of the time. All of the time. Because every single scene, and this is, I can say this about any of my favorite anime, this is what you have to do to make a 10 out of 10 in my book, is that every scene, the visuals need to convey the emotion as powerfully as possible. And that's how they do it in this show. If they have an emotion that they're trying to convey, they don't just have the characters express it on their face. They don't just have the shot composition express it. The color design, the character design, the visual design,
the line work,
the entire medium.
Yeah.
Like, they will shift mediums entirely to convey this emotion in the most powerful way they can afford. You know? Spend effort, not money, as one of the characters says at one point in the show. Like, you know, they make it so... And, like, when you do something like that, I can forgive cost-cutting techniques. Like, and the cost-cutting techniques are things that aren't obtrusive. For instance, Maybe an episode will start with 2 minutes of just the last 2 minutes of the previous episode. Okay, whatever, I can just skip that. It's no big deal. Or it's already a good scene. I don't mind watching it again. You know, there are certain, like, really beautifully animated emotions that will get reused if it's the same emotion again. They'll just show you this clip, and you're like, okay, well, that's a great clip. I don't mind if I watch that 1,000 times. You know, like, there's never a moment...
It's not just wasting time. It's like there's a meaning behind it.
Exactly. And I'm not being...
There's thought behind it.
Like, a lot of shows will show me an ugly image because they can't afford to make every image great. No, make some great images and then just show them to me again, and I'd rather see that, you know? And, like... It's a Shaft show. They are the absolute gods of wringing the most you possibly can out of the smallest number of staff members who are available to work on a show. So every single fucking scene looks incredible, sounds incredible.
Oh yeah, the music is fucking dang. There is one song though that is just Stairway to Heaven.
Like legally distinct Stairway to Heaven. Not only is the soundtrack great, the sound design is so fucking creative. There are so many moments where there might be like, they might put an effect on the character's voice for just a word, you know, like to emphasize this one thing that they said, or like, you know, those moments where it like cuts to their mouth and the word. This is something that, again, Shaft are the masters of, like, just singling out individual moments and doing something different with them. The fact that there's 3 cats that the sisters own that like have these like they'll just be like absently staring forward, but you'll hear their inner monologue in like a warped voice or whatever. Tons of sound effects, just any time that it could ever be done, why not throw in an extra sound effect? Just so many moments where the sound alone is what's guiding the emotions of the scene. And of course, the shogi matches where you just have to clack, clack, clack.
Sometimes you have characters tapping their legs and clicking their tongues.
Yeah, oh my god. 10 out of 10 sound design.
Voice acting.
Oh! God! Oh
voice
my god!
In this show.
This show might have the best voice acting I've heard in any anime. First of all, almost all my favorites are here. All my guys are here, and they are all giving the performance of a fucking lifetime. The best Hanakana voice performance I've ever heard from the sister Hina. Momo, the little baby girl, who sounds at first like she's actually a child actress, but it's not. It's the girl who played Serara in Log Horizon once again, and of course, who I gave voice acting performance of the year last year to Hisone from Hisone to Masotan. She sounds like a baby. I don't know how she does it.
She's so good.
She's so adorable. It's great.
She's so good. She makes my tits hurt.
Fucking, there's Tomokazu Sugita as the blonde guy with the glasses. Great. Actually sound like, the thing is that none of them are just playing the cliche version of their voices. Like, these are all voice actors who've done hundreds if not thousands of roles, who usually just get typecast to play the same role they've played in another show.
Yuki Aoi is the bully.
I didn't even recognize Yuki Aoi's voice. My favorite voice actress, I didn't recognize her at all. I had to look it up, and then like, even after having looked it up, it took me a couple minutes to be like, oh shit, that's right, that's Yuki Aoi. Oh my god. And she's talking to fucking Fumiko Tachi, what the fuck is his name? The guy who plays Gendo Ikari. And he's great. He's actually not just an asshole dad. He's like a great guy in this. Oh my god. All the voice acting is incredible. Everybody knocked it out of the park. And it's easier to do that when you have rich, detailed, well-written characters, well-rounded characters who have a lot to express about. Fuck, I have to cut the clip. So, yeah, I think that's like the baseline of why the show is so good. Incredible visuals.
So, everything.
Non-stop incredible visuals. Many, many images that I have never seen before that were totally unique, that are etched into my mind, moments that would be good fucking wallpapers.
Hell yeah.
All throughout the show. And like, even scenes that aren't, like, because there's some scenes that are fucking crazy. Like, there's some scenes where the art is, like, in a style I've never even conceived of, you know? I could think of so many incredible moments. One of my favorites is when, Rei is, like, just doing, like, a practice match against Shimada-sensei, and, like, there's, like, all these floodwaters. It, like, looks like she's using surf on him.
Yeah.
But it's like a surf of, like, words and weird textures that are blowing him back, and Shimada-sensei keeps looking all badass. Like, they keep posing him all cool as he's, like, flooding him with all these torrents. Of course, the famous shot from the first episode where he's under the bridge and, like, the shadow, like, wipes across, and I think it's, like, paint on glass or something. Some kind of crazy animation. Just tons of stuff like that. But then even, like, the casual, normal scenes are always just so well framed. Like, I remember a shot that stood out to me where it was just, like, I think Hina just, like, sitting in a chair in the middle of a room while, like, 3 or 4 old guys are cooking. And, like, it's just framed, like, in a way where you can see the whole room and all the characters in it. And it's just, like, characters standing around cooking, but it looks so good. I mean, I literally can't say enough about the visuals. I can't. I could go on forever. I could look at every image in this show and say something about how incredible it is. Like, it's, astounding. The sound design, incredible again. Voice acting, 10 out of 10. Like, soundtrack is great. I wouldn't say it's, like, one of my favorite soundtracks, but, like, I have no complaints about it, other than that, like, a few of the songs are clearly ripped off of other songs, especially the Stairway to Heaven one.
Yeah, I mean, they all set the mood, and they are all, like, catchy.
It doesn't help that the Stairway to Heaven one is used, like, all throughout an episode. Like, that whole episode is basically that song.
Themes,
yeah,
so,
it's like Shimada's theme song,
it's really
basically.
fucking cheesy. The OPs are great.
The OPs and EDs they're all good. They're all very, like, you know, they're all just typical, like, adult contemporary J-pop. Like, if you've ever seen Honey and Clover, it's the same thing. Like, the same music. This is, of course, from the same manga authors, Honey and Clover, which is also a great show, but, like, nowhere near the inventiveness of Sangatsu and just the sheer breadth of what this show tries to accomplish. Because, like, that show was, like, college drama, lots of relationship drama. One of the most interesting things about Sangatsu is that there is no relationship drama. Like, I think that the author was, I don't know if she was just challenging herself to do this, but it really feels as though she had set some kind of rule for herself of, like, let's never focus on romance because I can tell a million interesting stories without having to, you know? Because, like, yeah, like, there's so many characters with... I mean, it's not that there's no romance or sexuality in the show at all. Like, Rei's sister has kind of romantic drama, but it's, like, very distant, and it's a very weird relationship.
Hina has a crush on somebody.
Yeah, but it's not really explored much.
No, but,
and
like,
it never
still...
leads to drama until, like, the end.
I mean, it still leads to some drama, but
Yeah.
it's just, like, not the focus.
No, it's so rare, and, like, it's very clever that, like, you know, Rei's in his first year of high school at the start of the show. The 3 sisters are, one is, like, 23, one is a second-year middle school student, and the other is, like, a baby. So none of them are in his dating pool, you know, like, so, like, he never really runs into girls his age, and so, like, that keeps it from ever having that tension. Like, you suspect that him and Hina could eventually develop feelings for each other, especially, you know, at the very end of season 2 where they're going to the same high school, but, like, you know, and I wouldn't be surprised if the story goes in that direction, and I'd be fine with that because I can't fucking believe it went 44 episodes and had all of these emotional, you know, things happen without ever having to use romance as its thing. And, like, I love romance. I'm a huge romance fan, but, like, romance is a very well-trodden genre.
Yeah.
So to see a show that can avoid it entirely and still have so much intrigue is really impressive to me.
Absolutely.
God, what else is fucking amazing? I guess we can just dive into talking about specifics at this point, and characters and moments. Do you have any, like, favorite things that happen in the show? Because I have a couple, like, specific, not just specific scenes, but, like, specific arcs or, like, ways that certain things are portrayed.
I guess my favorite, like, kind of moments in the show is, I freaking forgot his name, but the fat friend.
Nikaido.
Yeah, Nikaido. Just, like, his overall arc, and, like, his backstory I thought was really interesting, because, like, he's a really endearing character who goes through a lot and has such a positive, like, impact on everybody around him, but you have to get through the layers.
Yeah.
The ridges before you, like, can love him. And also, I think I really like the relationship between the older sister and the other older shogi player.
Which older sister? Oh, you mean
his older
sister? Yeah. Her and fuck, what's his name? Gota.
Gota, yeah.
Yeah, Gota. He's great. He's
and there's a scene.
He
too
looks
where,
like Lad Russo from fucking Baccano.
The scene where, like, the old man tells him, like, he's ruining the atmosphere in the room.
That was a great scene.
Basically.
Yeah, like.
Oh my god, there's so many good scenes.
Or was it Goto? It can't be Gota. That doesn't sound like a name. Goto?
I think it's Goto.
Goto. That sounds right.
That's definitely what it's written as.
Yeah.
At least.
There's a lot of fucking characters in this show, and there's a lot of Japanese names to learn. But, like, God, so aside, like, again, we did not rewatch the first 11, but I remember certain scenes I love from that, which I already talked about. But, like, in episode either 12 or 13, so this character Goto, who he's this crazy-ass older man who's, like, a violent psycho, but also a master shogi player, and he's fucking Rei's adoptive sister. And, like, and she's, you know, like, what, 19, if that, and, you know, he's married as well.
But his wife is...
Well, no spoilers. Well, spoilers from here on out. So if you haven't watched the show, and nothing we say from here on is gonna mean anything to you if you haven't seen it. So, yeah.
You should fucking be watching it right now if you haven't. Like...
But anyway, yeah, so Goto's wife is in a coma, which was another one of those things where it's like, as the show was going, like, we keep being told, like, Goto is... Everybody's like, this guy's a piece of shit monster. He's an angry, violent, crazy man. He's cheating on his wife with this young girl. But, like, as it went on, I started to feel like maybe his wife's, like, a bitch or something. Like, there's gotta be some reason. Because it doesn't seem like... He doesn't seem like the type who would just cheat on his wife for no reason. Because he's not... Even though he's crazy, he's not unreasonable. He's just... Like, he's portrayed... Because the sister says he's not sane. Like, she wants him to be crazy because that's what she's into, because she is crazy. But, like, he's not really crazy. He's just an ass. But, like, he's an ass because his wife's in a fucking coma, and, like, you know, he clearly just doesn't care about putting anyone else's needs above his own, you know, at that point. So, like... Yeah, well, you were saying that was one of your favorite things, right? I was talking about... So, like, yeah, he's introduced, and Rei hates him and, like, really wants to beat him. And so they're in this tournament where if he wins all his matches, he will fight Goto in the end. And because of the way... This show is so fucking masterful at manipulating your emotions, and the way that it introduces this character is... probably my favorite introduction of a character, like, ever. For like, it, not just for the moment itself, but, like, knowing how the character evolves going forward. So, Goto is painted as, like, this big boss, and Rei, who is a very self-centered person, and that's important to the narrative, and it's like, it's not something that you really think about because he is the protagonist. You're in his shoes. You expect the narrative to be focused around him. But the world is not focused around him, which is rare in these shows, because usually, because the main character is the protagonist, the story really does revolve around their emotions and what would be cathartic for them. But this show's not like that. This show is about naturally evolving, like, it's just about the world playing out as it is. There is no over-dramatization of, like, I shouldn't... The events are not coordinated around what would be the most dramatic. It just portrays the events in the most dramatic way it can.
Yeah.
Which is the smarter way to write, in my opinion. So he thinks he's going to just bowl over this other guy and get to Goto. And the other guy is this guy named Shimada. Now, we have never seen this Shimada guy. He's never been present in the show. And they go out of their way to not even show his face on screen at all. He's basically written off. Like, Rei just, like, looks over his notes and he's like, I gotta fight this Shimada guy. You know, he's won a lot. He's been around for a long time, but he's never really stood out because he doesn't have, like, a particular tactic he's known for. He just kind of is good. So Rei's like...
He's kind of a flaccid man.
Yeah. So Rei... He's not, though. He's not in reality.
No, but
he is milquetoast, but not flaccid. Yeah. Flaccid would be more like... I feel like there is a flaccid man in this show, but I'd have to...
The friend. The one that looks kind of like the autistic guy from Shiki.
Oh, yeah, that random guy. He looks and sounds kind of like him. That guy's never really gotten a spotlight yet, so I don't remember his name.
No.
He's kind of around. Again, there's a shitload of characters. Like, there's still tons of characters who I'm curious about, who I'm waiting for their story to be told.
Right.
But, like, anyway, so Rei's like, yeah, this Shimada guy, whatever. I just gotta get past this dude, and I can go fight Goto, who I'm fucking pissed at. And so, like, everything is leaning into that. But then he starts the match, and really, as soon as the match started, it started to feel to me, I was like, I don't think he's gonna win this. Like, I don't think he's gonna get to fight Goto. And it's because he's being really arrogant. Like, he's like, as the match is going on, he's just like, alright, well, I just gotta do this, I gotta do that. And then, like, he's not looking up. He's just looking at the shogi board. And we keep seeing the body of Shimada, but we never see his face. And then the match is going along, and then Rei finally gets to a point where he's like, wait a minute. I'm fucked. And then he, like, looks up, and the camera pans up, and it reveals the face of the guy. And he's like, huh, you finally looked this way, huh? And then this character, Shimada, is then from that point forward, like, the most important character in the show. Where this guy, who is, yeah, he is an unassuming 30-something random old guy. However, he is an incredible shogi player who is, like, he hasn't, like, part of the reason he doesn't stand out is he hasn't won any titles yet. But he is competing for titles. He just hasn't won yet, you know? So, like, yeah, he's not going to be famous as, like, one of the gods, but he's competing with the gods. He's like Hugs in Smash. If you follow Smash, like, Hugs is, like, always in the top 20, but is not considered a Smash god. You know, he's, like, that level of, like, yeah, if you know the game, you know this guy. And also, he's the best. He's the most cool guy.
Bro.
So, like, Shimada... He beats Rei, and then, like, Rei gets to see him go up against Goto, and he beats Goto. And that's when you start to be like, okay, this guy's kind of a badass. And then you get, like, this great scene where you sort of get into the mindset of somebody who's just won, like, such a major game. And then we find out that Goto has this workshop where, because he, like, works with younger players, and, like, he commonly goes around to, like, events and, like, basically he goes around to places where there's lots of young people playing shogi and stuff, and he'll, like, give speeches and shit to kids. So, like, Rei had kind of been aware of that. I think he had been to one, but, like, it had left no impression on him because the guy just seemed boring. And he's pretentious.
Yeah.
So he teaches kids and stuff, and he has this workshop that Nikaido goes to, because Nikaido is, like, his disciple. And Nikaido's, like, Rei's best friend. He doesn't even, like... has not even conceived of the fact that this matters at all.
No.
That this guy is his disciple. So, he joins the workshop, and then, like, this
oh my
becomes...
god, the workshop's great, because they have that other kid.
Yeah, that's, like, really dark kid who's, like... the way he's introduced, Shimada's, like, you know, he only says, like, 3 things per hour, but that doesn't mean he's angry. And he always looks pissed off, but it doesn't mean he doesn't want to play with you and stuff. You were like, this
That's
is me.
That's my self-insert character.
But yeah, so, like, he goes to the workshop, and so now, like, Shimada basically is his teacher, and, like, they develop this close relationship, and, like, Rei makes friends with all these people, and it's like, over the course of this show, this kid goes from basically having no human connections at all to being, like, deeply in this community and, like, knowing all these people and working closely with them and having all these, you know, these different shoulders that he doesn't even really look at them as people who he could call on for support, because he's not the type to call on anybody, but, like, he has this network of people who care about him now, you know? And, like, so he goes to this workshop, and then Shimada is having this really big match where he's trying to take, like, the ultimate title, I guess, because I think he was against the champ, right? Didn't he fight the champ?
Yeah.
It wasn't in, like, the title match, but it was, like, the match before the title match, because the title match was with the big, tall guy. But, like, he's going into this big match, and we learn about his entire backstory. Now, one of my favorite things about this show... No, I'll even say this... Well, okay, there's so many things to call my favorite thing. One of my favorite things about this show is that it has such a rich cast of old guys. Not enough old ladies. Well, it might work on that, but... There's so many fucking old dudes.
I mean, there's, like, no women shogi players.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I don't think there's a single woman in this league. Do women are they not allowed to play shogi, or do they just not?
No, they can play it. Like, Hina was playing it. I just, like,
I mean,
think
like, in
at
the
a
league,
certain level, like,
women just
you're
aren't
not gonna
interested.
see a lot of women who participate and stuff like that, because, like, if you're smart enough to do that, there's more opportunities for you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, and also, I don't know, there's not a lot of women who play chess professionally.
Yeah,
So
I guess it's just not something girls are into, but yeah, or not something they're pushed to do. Yeah.
Like...
So anyway, there's so many old dudes who have, like, fully fleshed out backstories, and it's crazy because most anime will kind of take the older cast members for granted. It's like, you've got the younger cast, and you'll generally learn what their backstory is like, but young people don't have enough backstory for that to be particularly interesting. Like, not to say that none of the characters in this show have interesting backstories, but it's all, you know, it's all predictable because there's only so many different things that are going to happen to you growing up. But, like, when you learn about Shimada's backstory, it's like he grew up in this rural town where, like, there was, like, lots of old people, and they taught him how to play shogi, and so he just thought it was... He liked it because it had no ending. Because, like, if he read books or watched movies and stuff like that, then there would just be an end point, but shogi would go on forever. So, because you can always learn new things about it. So he was playing with all these old people, and then he starts, like, in his 20s, like, busing to Tokyo, like, all the way out. He would bus, like, hours every day just to play in the league. But then, like, when you actually get into the league, it's really difficult because it's fucking everybody's good.
Yeah.
So, like, they're all competing, and, like, you have to rise up the ranks, and it's really, like, brutal trying to, like, raise your rank in shogi. So, like, whereas back home, he was considered this shogi genius because he was playing against old dudes
people.
and shit. You know, in the big city, he's nothing special. So he spends, like, his whole 20s just grinding, trying to get up the ranks and, like, you know, losing his soul out of his body as he takes these fucking long-ass bus rides and, like, wondering if this is worth it, but, like, not being able to give up. But then, like, we also learn eventually, after his big match, that he has, like, this initiative he set up back in his hometown because, like, it snows a lot there, so all the old people just...
Meals on Wheels. It's really cute.
Like, all the old people don't really leave their houses or socialize during the winter.
He'll, like, go around in a bus and pick them up and, like, play shogi with them.
It's like, every weekend he brings all the old people to this shogi center, and they all play, and then, like, they also stock them up on groceries and send them back home so they don't have to go out and buy groceries all the fucking... It's just such a great idea, and it's like, this is all this character. Yeah. This is all new things that we learned about this guy who Ray literally just thought was some unassuming old guy that he was going to blow through on his way to his dramatic rivalry. But fuck that. That is not nearly as interesting as this guy.
No. Nothing
that could have happened would have been more interesting than this guy's story. And that's why I fucking love it. So Shimada ended up being, like, my favorite character just because he has so much going on with him and such a rich... And then, like, there's even stuff like he's got all these physical problems where he has, like, perpetual stomach aches.
Ulcers or
and he's, like, fucking has to like drag himself kicking and screaming to every match.
He has the good dope. He gives it to all the kids.
What do you mean?
He has the medicine.
Oh yeah, the stomach medicine.
To Ray.
There's just so much richness to these characters. Now, is there anything you want to talk about before I just keep steamrolling for like another hour?
I'm just waiting for you to get to more points because like there's so much great shit that happens in the show, and you're still on season 1.
Oh yeah, well I have to talk about Ray because he's probably one of the top 5 most relatable characters for me ever. Because the particular social awkwardness and anxiety that he has and how it's portrayed and explained, like everything that comes out of his mouth, I'm like, I felt that. I feel that way. That's me right there. Oh my god, this character is me.
There's one scene where he goes to visit the 3 sisters and Hina's like asleep on the floor and he's afraid to enter the house because he doesn't know if he should be there. So he just like sits on the porch and waits for her to wake up.
And I was like, that is me.
Yeah,
because
I can totally picture that.
That's because I'm the type of person who, when I don't really know what to do, I'm not afraid to waste my time. So, like, I will feel awkward and just kind of shut down and just stay, you know? And just, like, wait until whenever I think
wait
is...
Wait till further instruction.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, it's funny because I don't think that many of the ways that I relate to Ray are the kinds of things that come through in my videos. Because, for one thing, he's much younger, and obviously I was very different before I became a YouTuber. Like, I didn't have this boisterous, over-the-top... I was still pretty over-the-top, like, online in my speech and, like, the way I talked and stuff. And, like, when I did actually open up to people, I had that like explosiveness that Ray doesn't have, which is why I say he's not the most relatable character to me. But like, when I think about who I used to be and like what most of my time was like, when I wasn't expressing myself, when I wasn't talking to people, when I wasn't typing, like just my everyday life and emotions and what my inner self feels like, spot on. Absolutely 100% spot on. And, like, the way that the visuals convey his emotions are things I relate to. Where it's like, oh my god, yeah, that's what that feeling looks like, you know? And even, like, you know, even, like, the ways that he's a good guy are the same ways that I'm a good guy. And the ways that he's a bad guy are the same, because like
you're an arrogant bastard,
and like almost unadmitted, like, well, I'm more like aware, I'm like more self-aware of my own arrogance than he is, where he's wrapped up in his own world and he hasn't quite realized it.
Yeah, not until the old guy's like, you know, you can tell that you're wrapped up in your own... What did he say to him?
He basically says, like, oh, you think, like, you literally
think the world revolves around you, but he had just literally said that about his opponent.
Yeah.
Like, he had an inner monologue where he's like, he just thinks the world revolves around him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It was so funny.
He gets called out on it, like, a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Because, like, Nikaido calls him out on TV for getting wrapped up in himself. And then there's the part where... My favorite is when he's, like, in the lunch hall, and the one guy, like, speculates on his thoughts. Like, oh, I bet you're thinking this. And then he, like, goes on this whole diatribe of, like, how he like, all of the ways that he thinks that he's just gonna bowl over his opponents and, like, easily make it to this next rank. And, like, he says all that, and then Ray's like, there's no way I would think anything like that. And then he thinks about it and realizes that's exactly what he was thinking. He gets mega embarrassed and leaves. Like...
Oh, boy.
Yeah, he's... And I have, for a long time, thought of myself as, like, online I come off as, like, particularly arrogant because I portray that as, I think it's funny and I think it's a fun character. But, like, the idea of just being too wrapped up in yourself to see what's going on, that is much more me. And, like, the relationship he has with the people around him where, like, because just like him, I was bullied in elementary and a little bit in middle school. And so, like, Ray, like, growing up, kids, you know, they picked on him, but mostly in an avoidant way. It was never, like, torture bullying. It wasn't like they fucking threw his shoes in the lake and shit like that. Like, sometimes kids threw things at him, kind of, but, like, it was always, like, one-off incidents, and that's how it was for me.
Yeah,
that's why, like...
I can relate.
it's always been hard for me to say, like, oh, I got bullied, because when I see kids who, like, got bullied, it's like, yeah, they got, you know, like, the kids who kill themselves or who shoot up a school, they get routinely bullied, you know? I was just, like, randomly picked on, and I never knew why or what was going on. And that's how Ray is portrayed, as, like, he just doesn't get why it's happening, and he just kind of wishes to be on his own.
Yeah.
And there's this one scene that we both were like,
oh
literally
God.
me, where he's on the bus for the school trip, and this kid is like, oh, I have to sit next to Ray? Can't I sit somewhere else? There's plenty of open seats. And he, like, argues with the bus driver, and then the bus driver's like, fine, just whatever. And he's like, all right. So he goes off to sit somewhere else, and Ray's thinking, I don't mind that you don't want to sit next to me. I just wish you wouldn't be so loud about it. But then once he was gone, I realized I was glad he had moved. And I was like, I've literally had this exact scenario happen to me. I've had
Same.
people, like, refuse to sit next to me loudly and boisterously, and me be glad that I was left alone, because I don't want to deal with people, you know? And, like, always, every time he's on a trip or something, he goes off to find his own corner to eat in. I did that every time. I always, any situation, I mean, like, I was the kid who went straight to the back of the lunchroom, you know, like, back corner seat that I, like, the farthest away I could find at a table with nobody else at it, you know? Like, that is Ray. And, but then by the time he gets to high school, he's just a ghost. And that's also how it was for me, where, like, my last couple years of high school, like, the last year I really remember getting picked on in any way was, like, 10th grade, and it was just, like, kids kind of errantly making fun of me. Or, like, there were also kids who just didn't like me, but it wasn't, like, bullying. They just didn't like me.
Yeah, it probably wasn't fun to pick on you. They just, like, thought you were weird.
Yeah, but, like, 11th and 12th grade, that mostly stopped because everybody thought I would kill them if they did that. Like, people at my school were very aware of school shootings, like, and they were not ready to...
The way boys and girls get bullied is very different, and, like, they do kind of go into it in the show.
Yeah, but, where the girls, it's more psychological torture, and with boys, it's more, like, you get beat up.
Yeah, like, bullying for me was always worse in high school than I'd say in middle school.
Yeah.
But it did happen in both, so I can relate to, like, to both instances of bullying in the show.
Well, that's something we got to get into, because season 2, the bullying arc, holy shit. Look, I generally hate bullying arcs in anime. This is the best one I've ever seen. I wish
that everybody who, like, would talk about bullying would see this movie. Like, every teacher.
Yeah.
Or, like, every organization that, you know, it's like, oh, we're anti-bullying. It's like, okay, like, why don't you show us how bullying is broken down in, like, a case-by-case scenario? Because, like, this show does it perfectly.
We have to cut the clip again.
Oh, no. There's another show in this episode.
Huh?
There's another show we talk about in this episode.
No, we're just gonna make this a one guy, just Sangatsu, because I mean I don't want to drag it down with any negativity. I just want it to be pure.
You just want it to be pure bliss.
Pure bliss. This is all Sangatsu fucking praise. Yeah, the bullying arc, like, it's not to say that I've never seen bullying done okay in other shows, but it usually frustrates me because, first of all, it's hard to watch, especially as somebody who got bullied. You know, like, and when I see it handled badly, it's infuriating, because it's like, no, it's not like this. And, like
Koi no Katachi, the bullying in there.
That's an example, but it's because most of them try to, it always goes to the extreme. And I know that, like, Japanese bullying is very particular. There's a lot of stereotypes of, like, everybody does the same shit. They fuck with your shoes in your locker, they fuck with your desk, they write on the chalkboard, like, it's all the cliches. And those are all in this, too. But, like, the way that the show goes about it, it's that, first of all, the bullying starts with Hina's friend. And she gets bullied to a point where she fucking transfers schools, literally moves out to the middle of nowhere, and has to go to, like, a rehab in, like, the countryside. Like, she is fucking traumatized by the bullying.
It's
like,
a little extra.
Her life is, like, fucked up afterwards. Like, she was not ready for it. But then when Hina's getting bullied...
3 steps of making friends. Animals, old people,
and then people your own age.
It's like, damn.
But Hina, like, the bullying transfers to her because she was defending that girl. And she stands up for herself, but, like, that's what makes it so great, is that most of these shows, they're going to try to resolve it in one way. It's just going to be like, okay, here's what we have to do.
Yeah, because
you have to stand up for yourself, or somebody has to take action. Tell a teacher, do this.
People have a reason to want a certain course of action to be made, not necessarily the best action. It's like, well, we're the school, so we want you to follow the protocols, or like, we're your parents, so we just care about you. We want you to stand up for yourself. Or and then if you talk to your friends, it's like, well, we don't want to get involved.
Right.
But like, you have to take into account everybody.
And that's what makes it
teachers.
What makes it so incredible is that they go through every possibility and show you how, like, it is always more complicated than that. Mm-hmm. There's always something more to it, because she can't simply stand up for herself because nobody else in class will come to her aid, and no matter what she says or does to the bullies, they're going to just make it worse. They're just going to turn around and do the same thing in kind. And yeah, she could just put up with it for however long it takes, and like eventually she does resolve to do that because she gets so fucking angry and pissed off, which is great, and I love her. But like, that doesn't resolve anything. It just means that you've chosen to endure this because you know you have to. And like, bitter as that may be, that might have been, like, I mean, that might have been the most realistic way this could have been portrayed. But like, she goes to the teacher is just, she
doesn't want to get involved. She's incapable. No, like, she really is. And it sucks because like a lot of people, there's a lot of teachers who don't know how to handle it or refuse to, and like,
and she just can't deal with the stress. It's like, because this teacher is like on the fucking edge. She's
old, and she has been losing a lot of weight,
and
like,
she breaks.
Shaky.
They break her ass.
She fucking faints in the middle of the class.
Well, she goes on this whole tirade about how she's like, look, I know bullying is happening, but it's like every single year this happens, and there's nothing we can, like, no matter how many times I try to resolve it, it always comes back. And like, so she's basically just driven insane. Assumably she quits being a teacher because she can't deal with it anymore, which was an incredible scene. It was like, oh my god, like, that bitch went...
She literally
But like,
handle it.
I have seen this happen to teachers. Like, I've seen teachers who are not emotionally prepared to do their job because it's insanely hard. Like,
I had a teacher once who like literally flipped out and started crying because this one kid in my class like would wear a ton of Axe body spray, and it would like give her migraines. And she, like, literally flipped out.
I mean, it's a weird thing because we need a lot of teachers. So I think we accept anybody who has passed the qualifications. Okay, but it's like, it's...
a lot of the problem is, like, people decide to be teachers way too early. It's like, you go to college, you decide which track you're going to at a really young age, and you're expected to kind of know what you're doing. And, like... You're fucking 22. You're not an adult. You're just out of high school yourself. Like, there's probably, like, I'm not saying, like...
Probably more like 24, because it's 6 years to be a teacher.
Yeah, but, like, you could become a student teacher.
Yeah.
Like, at a really young age and stuff, and it's not for everybody.
Still,
and
24 is mad fucking young. Like, I at 24 couldn't have taught a fucking class. No, especially not... trying to learn 100 people and their unique needs.
And it's not even necessarily that, like, they're too young. It's just, like, the people that go into teaching, like, that's the only experience they've had has been in high school.
Right.
Like, they're just like, oh, I want to be a teacher because the only people, like, I see on a day-to-day basis are teachers.
It's really
and
weird.
And I can't imagine my life outside of school.
Like, being a teacher is it requires such a huge amount of different things for you to be good at. And, like... the biggest one is you have to be, like, emotionally resilient.
I went to, like, a teaching school. Like, there was a lot of teachers at SUNY Oswego. It used to be a teaching school. But, like, the people who studied teaching were, like, the worst. They're the ones who did the most drugs, the ones who went out the most. And it's just, like, I fucking see you. Like, you want to be a kindergarten teacher, but you're doing coke. Like...
Yeah, and it like moments like that in the show, like when the teacher. There are moments during this bullying arc that had me like fuming, like utterly fucking pissed because it is believable, because I know it's real. And then there's other moments where the catharsis is so godly, and you remember that that's right. Just because usually this stuff goes bad doesn't mean it can't be dealt with, doesn't mean there aren't logical ways of dealing with this if the right people get involved, you know? And so, like, early on, it's a struggle because, like, Ray, who, of course, you know, immediately he hears about this and he's like, I want to do anything I can. And he comes to his teacher and is like, you know...
His teacher's great.
His teacher's one of the best, one of the many amazing old guys in this show. And the teacher's like, look...
I love middle-aged men.
The teacher brings up, like, pages and pages of Google results. And he's like, look, you can find every conceivable study and report and, like, incident and, like, every side of every issue that's happened. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. There is no, like, do this and it works, because everything we've tried has worked and it hasn't worked. And so you need to understand this scenario, what can be done here, what are the needs of the people involved. Like, what does the person being bullied want as the resolution to this scenario, and what can be done about it, you know? And, like, because at the end of the day, the problem is that the bully is raised like shit. Like, that always is what it comes down to, is that they are... like, nobody is just born a bully. You know, you become a bully because there's something wrong in your life. You know, someone's not teaching you right. And so, like, you have a flawed perception of what you are supposed to do in society. And even then, nobody can necessarily prove you wrong. Like, if you have this personality, it doesn't mean you can't make it through life. Plenty of bullies, will go on to be successful, and they'll never have to regret it. There's no reason to doubt these actions they've taken. And that's how this girl feels. The ringleader of the bullies is like a hardcore bitch, and her mom is a hardcore bitch. So, we meet the mom, and we immediately understand, like, okay, that's why she's like this, So obviously the mom's not going to do anything, because she won't even acknowledge it. She refuses to believe her daughter's done anything because there's no proof, So ultimately, what has to happen is that the teacher, the, like, senior teacher or whatever, what's he called? The head teacher, I guess.
Yeah.
He has to get involved, and he is awesome. He is this hard-ass, badass motherfucker.
They could make a movie just about that character handling the situation, and it'd be a fucking hit.
I love this guy.
Yeah.
And what's great about him is that I think that what he realizes that the original teacher doesn't is that these students are humans. They are just baby adults. You don't have to treat them any differently. You don't have to act like you're so confused, because they have the same psychology as anyone else, like, you just have to understand what they're thinking. Why do they think this is okay? Why does a bully think it's okay to do what they do, So basically, he comes in and he immediately identifies, like, what's going on, and he finds a way to disrupt the social order of the classroom, because the reason nobody in the class will admit to the bullying, because they're all afraid that they'll become a target. So he just sequesters off all of the people who he knows are the core of the problem, and has them all be talked to, and then he talks to the rest of the class. And so once everybody realizes that they're in a situation where they can be honest about what's happening, and that if they are, they won't have this hanging over them anymore, he basically, creates an atmosphere where everybody feels that they can admit to the truth. And then once the truth is out there, he carts in the bullies to have them apologize, but the girl who's the ringleader clearly is not sincere in her apology. So he pulls her aside every single day to talk to her, because he's like, I'm not going to stop talking to you until you recognize what you've done. And he just, like, makes it his personal mission of, like, I am going to literally talk to this girl until she can identify that she has done something wrong. And, like, I'm going to keep trying words until I find words that connect. And, of course, she has, like, this sort of above it all, thinks she's really smart, philosophical edge to her, where like she's like, oh, what's the point of putting effort into?
Yeah, they all tell us we have to try our hardest, but like it doesn't mean anything. Like
yeah,
we might not get a job. Like why should we do it if there's no guarantee?
And the answer he eventually gives her is, you know what? You're right. There is no reason to work hard.
He's like, I didn't ever have to think about it because I was just trying to be a good person. But I guess when you think about it, there isn't a reason.
Yeah, and he's like, but you know, you can, like, sure, there is no reason, but you're just being a coward. You know, is basically what he says. He's like, yeah, you're just afraid. You're just afraid that you're not good and that you're going to suck in the future, that you won't be good enough to actually succeed. It's like, if you're worried about, if your mentality is, like, why should I work hard when there's no guarantee that anything will come of it? It just means you're afraid that nothing's going to come of it, which means that you're a coward, you know? And, like, I think when he hits her with that, she's like, oh, fuck. We haven't had a resolution to that yet, though, by the end of the show. Because this show, this could go on forever. Like, literally, this story could go on forever and always be just as good, as long as the author didn't, you know, somehow come up with a really stupid idea. But, like, I don't see that happening. But, like, because, again, who's to say where a story begins and ends? You could really cut it off anywhere and it makes just as much sense. But, like, there's plenty of story threads that are still unresolved by the end of the 2 seasons of the anime.
I mean, they do go to different high schools. So.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So I guess they don't have to deal with her anymore. Maybe that's the last word on the situation, is him hitting her with that. But it was pretty great. But, like, even earlier than that, in the bullying scenario, when Hina, there's a part where, you know, she comes home from school and she's like, she's clearly been bullied, and she breaks down crying in front of her family, and she explains the whole scenario. This is how we first learn about it all. And when the granddad finds out, he's just like, because, like, basically she says to the sister, like, I didn't do anything wrong, right? Like, I was just standing up for my friend. Like, I'm getting bullied now, but, like, it's just because I wanted to do the right thing. And the granddad just congratulates her. Like, he's like, man, what you did was definitely the right thing, and I'm really proud of you, and, like, most adults wouldn't even be able to do that. And when he said that, I lost my shit! I started crying, and then I started thinking about it, and then I started crying harder, and then I was just, ah! It was one of the most touching things I've ever seen in a show. Just his reassurance and, like, so beautiful. And, like, then there's the part where she's, like, crying and she's, like, telling Ray, like, you know, like, I know I did the right thing, and, like, you know, like, someone has to stand up for this kind of shit. And then Ray realizes that she has saved him. Like, he feels as though his younger bullied self has been, like, even though he's not that same, like, you know, he isn't that person right now, but he is that person still. And so he feels as though she has reached back into his past and rescued the bullied child that he was. So and that he wants to now do that for her. And I was like, oh my god, this is the most touching thing I've ever seen. And I felt like I was being rescued by the show. It's incredible. What else is there? Anything else you want to talk about? The scene where he hangs out with the shogi master is great, where he finds out he's deaf on top of being autistic.
And it was really cute because he was following him around.
It was adorable. The scene with the old guy in the second half of season 2, his whole arc of, oh god, his line where he says, once again, I will become a human torch and be, and allow, what is it, like, allow myself to be swallowed by my, god damn it, by my misery or something like that.
Something like that.
It was a really cool
really
line.
powerful.
I need to look at it again because I wanted to quote it for the rest of my life. There was also some great imagery in that. Really cool old guy. This is definitely a show for people who like cool old guys.
The pigeon guy.
That was a weird one. Because, like, occasionally there is just, like, one-off characters who just suddenly get a backstory, and, like, you're not sure if they're ever going to come back. That guy was one of them, where it's, like, this dude who beat Nikaido, because Nikaido gets sick. Well, he has an illness, and, like, he passed... Well, you already know. You've seen the show. But, like, this guy just, like, kind of is introduced and, has a whole backstory.
Ray has, like, a chip on his shoulder. He's like, this guy's an asshole because he deliberately prolonged the match.
Knowing that Nikaido was sick.
Knowing that Nikaido was... I don't know if he knew that Nikaido was sick, but, like,
he
could have ended it earlier.
Yeah.
And instead of, like, being more aggressive and ending the fight, he played the game to his advantage and prolonged the fight until
he prolonged it knowing that Nikaido's condition would get worse and he wouldn't be able to handle a drawn-out battle.
Yeah.
And
Nikaido fucking collapses and has to go to the hospital, and then Ray's like, I'm going to avenge you, and he's just like, I want to punish this guy.
Yeah.
And he starts like getting really aggressive, and then he realizes like, no, I have to play this game like right.
Yeah.
I have to actually seriously consider him as an opponent. And he beats him, and then he had like this whole backstory with him, and he's just like, he's such a badass to his friends, because his friends are all kind of like, oh, you're such an enthusiast, you take care of like pigeons, and you play shogi, like, and he's just like, I gotta leave and take care of my pigeons and boys.
It's like, fuck you guys, you don't know anything about me.
And he has a pigeon named Gin.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah.
You would like that.
Of course. Gin is the best.
I want to make all the food that the sisters make. I love Baseball Guy. He's a nice guy. I love when he like invites Hina to play catch with him through the lunch break so that she won't get messed with during lunch.
And then he throws the ball really hard at the bullies and like
that was fucking hilarious.
I love that his grandpa is like a really big fan of Ray.
Yeah.
The show is so fucking great. It's so rich.
There's just so much going on, because like a scene will just come out of nowhere that's just like a little 1 minute random cute scene that like could have been its own entire short film, basically. Oh, remember the one where the blonde guy is like waking, like he has a match, I think against Shimada or something, where like, it just shows his morning routine, and it's this really weird, unbroken piece of animation of him, like, doing his whole morning with, like, this, fun music set to it. Very Shaft of a scene.
His cat is really cute.
Oh, yeah, and he picks up a lost
like, a
cat.
Stray kitten.
Another thing about this show, so, at the time, like, just the other day, I started writing a video that was called How to Make My Favorite Anime. Because I finally sort of, like, realized what it is that I like in shows.
Don't look, but the battery's gonna die.
Oh, God. Well, in any case, this show embodies all the things about it. But the number one thing was amalgamation. And it's just the fact that this show goes into every emotion, and it does it to the maximum. It's like, it's not afraid to tone shift very violently in a way that is what real life is like. Like, a lot of people complain about tone shifts, and I've never really understood it. I understand, like, how it can be weird and jarring, but, like, in real life, sometimes you just hear some really depressing shit when you're in the middle of a good mood, and it changes the whole nature of things.
I'll never forget when I was, like, a little kid, and I just bought this Pokemon game that I was playing with my grandparents who, like, visited me.
Hope you can tell the story fast.
Yeah, we just opened it, and we were starting to play it, and then my grandpa gets a call that his dad died.
Yeah.
And it's like, I never got to play that game because, like, there was just, like, so many negative, like, memories attached to it. But it was, like, it was really jarring because it was, like, this was a birthday celebration. And then, like, minutes later, it's like, oh, fuck.
And the show is aware of what it's doing when it does those. And they're all so effective, so, like, well-timed. And, like, the way that it'll introduce a comedic scene after a dramatic one will be, like, overwhelming. It's like, this is all rushing at you, and like the characters are like disturbed, or like they don't know how to deal. Like, Ray will go from being in his own head and being all dark, and then he'll step into the sister's house, and it's like so overwhelmingly positive that he's like, it just sucks him out of that. And you see that happen, you see him like, oh shit, like I have to be a human now, Anyway, we have literally run out the camera battery talking
about the Soba flume.
I love those. It's not soba, but Somen Flume, where they had a creative like game that they play with it with the pink and green noodles.
It was great.
Every scene in the show is amazing.
It's really good.
10 out of 10, possibly my favorite anime. Very happy we finally got to it.
The first season a 9, the second season a 10.
I gave them both. The first season I marked as a 10 on Mal. I considered it like a 9.6 at the time. After season 2, it's just like, I mean, there's nowhere to go but up because it just keeps expanding and making me care even more about what's going on and having these amazing emotional scenes and, you know, the more the merrier on emotional scenes and great characters. So, yeah, I love it. I'm extremely happy. Anime is saved forever. So, thank you, Sangatsu no Lion. Thank you, Umi no Chika. Thank you, Shaft. I cannot express my gratitude enough that you've given me something this incredible.
Yeah.
That's
such a shit year.
Yeah, in such a shit time, for something this great to exist is remarkable. So, thank you.